Let's start off with how American media behaved when Hitler was rising to power, which is in the late 1920s and early 1930s. That was Hitler's rise to power, right? And what they had done with Mussolini, the media, was glorify him, right? But instead of that, what they did with Hitler was, as I mentioned top of the episode, they made fun of him and did not take him seriously at all till it was too late. So I'm quoting from, and this has been my source of a lot of different articles, which is the Smithsonian Magazine's article, and it talks about how the American media dealt with Hitler's rise in the beginning, right? So I'm quoting from there. Mussolini's success in Italy normalized Hitler's success in the eyes of the American press, who in the late 1920s and early 1930s routinely called him the German Mussolini. Given Mussolini's positive press reception in that period, it was a good place from which to start. Hitler also had the advantage that his Nazi party enjoyed stunning leaps at the polls from the mid 20s to early 30s, going from a fringe party to winning a dominant share of parliamentary seats in free elections in 1932. This was, I'm moving away from the quote for a bit. This was the legitimately Hitler's turning point, because when they won like a major share, Hitler was made chancellor, right? So it was quite a big jump. But I'm coming back to the quote. But the main way that the press defanged Hitler was by portraying him as something of a joke. He was a nonsensical creature of wild words, whose appearance, according to Newsweek, suggests Charlie Chaplin. His countenance is a caricature. They're calling his face a caricature, dude. This is a wild fucking thing to say about a dictator. But anyway, it continues. He was as voluble as he was insecure, stated Cosmopolitan. When Hitler's party won influence in parliament, and even after he was made Chancellor of Germany in 1933, about a year and a half before seizing dictatorial power, many American press outlets judged that he would either be outplayed by more traditional politicians or that he would have to become more moderate. Sure, he had a following, but his followers were impressionable voters duped by radical doctrines and quack remedies, claimed the Washington Post. Now that Hitler actually had to operate within a government, the sober politicians would submerge this movement, according to the New York Times and Christian Science Monitor. A keen sense of dramatic instinct was not enough. When it came to time to govern, his lack of gravity and profundity of thought would be exposed. In fact, the New York Times wrote after Hitler's appointment to the chancellorship that success would only let him expose to the German public his own futility. Journalists wondered whether Hitler now regretted leaving the rally for the cabinet meeting, where he would have to assume some responsibility. So the way they underestimated him was, it seems, purely on how he presented himself instead of actually what he was doing on ground. Because let's be honest, 1933, 34, it wasn't a secret that he was a dictator, right? I mean, he passed the Enabling Act pretty much as soon as he came into power, right? And we will speak about the Enabling Act as well as we go forward. It's not like he was an obscure figure that nobody knew anything about and everybody was like, nobody will take him seriously. He was gaining quite a lot of followers, and he was already quite a dangerous man, and it was documented. He had already written Mein Kampf. So I don't understand how this was the conclusion that American media drew. And in fact, I'm going to talk about right now an article that discusses Dorothy Thompson's interview and coverage of Hitler in 1931. So for the uninitiated, Thompson was one of America's most respected foreign correspondents, right? She covered European politics for a decade. She became the Berlin bureau chief of the New York Post and the Philadelphia Ledger in 1925. That was not a time when women were allowed positions such as these. Mostly they were not, like becoming the bureau chief. They were reporters, but becoming bureau chief was rare. And she was the first American woman to run a foreign news bureau, right? So she was very accomplished at what she was doing. So Thomson was known for doing a fantastic research and doing like extremely meticulous interviews, right? She was very, very good at her job. But this article, I'm quoting from this publication called HistoryNet, and this article talks about her interview of Hitler in 1931. And remember, Hitler was not very happy giving interviews at that time. Like any other tyrant, he was not media friendly, right? He didn't want to be asked questions like some other dictator that you all might know.
Who?
So
Who? Hmm.
So don't worry, Sandy, we will get to that also. So this article says the American journalist did her homework, interviewing German politicians and Nazi supporters, watching Hitler's speeches, and reading Mein Kampf, the screed he had written in prison. She recognized that he was a magnificent propagandist and an orator with the tongue of the late William Jennings Bryan. Diverting from the quote again, William Jennings Bryan was basically a Democrat. He was a politician. He was known for being a great orator, right, as context suggests. But anyway, continuing. She understood his political beliefs and described them accurately as a mixture of fascism, racialist philosophy that teaches that Aryans, especially Nordics, are created to rule the earth, anti-Semitism, and muddled socialism. Thomson was well prepared for the interview, but she wasn't prepared for the man she met, who seemed so pathetic. He is formless, almost faceless, a man whose countenance is a caricature, a man whose framework seems cartilaginous without bones, she wrote. He is inconsequent and voluble, ill-poised, insecure. He is the very prototype of the little man. A lock of lank hair falls over an insignificant and slightly retreating forehead. The nose is large but badly shaped and without character. His movements are awkward, almost undignified, and almost unmartial. The eyes alone are notable. Dark gray and hyperthyroid, they have the peculiar shine which often distinguishes geniuses, alcoholics, hysterics. To that unflattering description, she added, there is something irritatingly refined about him. I bet he crooks his little finger when he drinks a cup of tea. Thomson looked at Hitler and saw a non-entity, a mere rabble-rouser incapable of leading a great nation. He didn't carry himself like a powerful politician, and he certainly didn't seem capable of becoming what many people feared, a future dictator of Germany. He didn't even possess the political skill necessary to charm an interviewer. The interview was difficult because one cannot carry on a conversation with Adolf Hitler, she wrote. He speaks always as though he were addressing a mass meeting. In personal intercourse, he is shy, almost embarrassed. In every question, he seeks for a
Sorry,
theme that
did
will
you
set
say
him off.
personal intercourse?
That's what she says. I'm quoting her.
What were they doing during
That's
that
what she
interview?
said.
Also, it's a conversation. She's just writing it that way.
That's a very
Personal
weird way of
conversation.
putting it. Very weird way
Yes.
of putting it,
Yeah.
for the
And the
record.
rest of it isn't. Like, it's such
No,
an odd
this is the
this
weirdest
thing.
bit.
Okay, fair. I'm continuing from the quote. Then his eyes focus in some far corner of the room. A hysterical note creeps into his voice, which rises sometimes almost to a scream. He gives the impression of a man in a trance. He bangs the table. When I was reading about this description, it almost felt like she was describing Yogi Adityanath. For our listeners who are unfamiliar with Indian political scenario right now, I highly suggest looking up Yogi Adityanath. Now, all of this description for a man who was, I will caveat this. We have people like this within all political scenarios, right? And because Sandy does not want me to take the name, I will not take the name of the person I'm talking about. But you will find people in Indian political scenarios today, right, in power in certain spaces of the country that I would describe like this. That that we would sit down. In fact, when the right-wing government came to power right at the beginning, and when this person was suddenly inserted into the public sphere without having the public being involved in this, in his election, that's what we all considered, right? We all looked at a man and said that this is kind of he's a joke. There are multiple politicians like this who are, as of today, after 12, 13 years of the right-wing government being in power, have created absolute havoc where they are. They have ruined complete states, right? But at the beginning, when they came into power, this is what we would consider, right? With Hitler, that was not the case. He was very well known in the country, in Germany, for what he was, and a foreign correspondent who has read his book where he describes what he will do with the fucking country, takes it, says he doesn't look like he can do it, is wild as far as journalism is concerned, right? If a fucking podcaster like me would sit down and be like, he looks like an idiot, nobody takes us seriously, man. It's fine. We are not journalists. We are not reporting. But you are a fucking journalist. You can't do this. You can't be like, I don't think personally that this man is going to create any impact because he looks like a caricature, because he cannot hold a conversation.
Did anyone follow up with her once all the atrocities took place?
Oh, yes. Very soon thereafter, right? 1935 onwards, she was like, we made a mistake. But very honestly, Hitler's regime was very short-lived. But it was a very, very, it was a disastrous regime, right? It created a global world war. Like, it's not a joke. So the time period, even though in between there are only 3 or 4 years where the media starts rectifying itself, it's enough to create all of the damage, right? All journalists later on were like, we did not anticipate this and we did not see this coming. I mean, they clearly underestimated him when Hitler became a chancellor. And I can say, fine, I will be like, okay, maybe they didn't know what was to come in the future. So maybe there was some confusion, right? The problem was also the coverage of anti-Semitism, right? Because Hitler and Nazi party were not hiding their anti-Semitism before 1933, right? The American media not just absolutely underestimated him, but also believed that this part would become moderate when he became part of an actual governance, right? I'm quoting from a couple of articles. On January 30th, 1933, the Cleveland Press published an article titled US Unruffled by Hitler Rise. High authorities here regard with complacence Adolf Hitler's rise to power in Germany. They express faith that Hitler would act with moderation. Experts base this belief on past events showing that so-called radical groups usually moderated once in power. Where has that happened? Which radical group, once it comes to power, gets moderated? By this time, Mussolini has happened. Stalin has happened. What are they talking about? Which radical group? And it is not, this is 1933. This has not changed till today. In 2012, when the right-wing government in India started campaigning for the central government really, really hard, they came into power in 2014. We knew what the right-wing government had done. If anybody, again, outside India listeners, if you're not aware of this, look up 2002 Gujarat riots. Look up who was in charge and look up what was happening at that point of time. We knew what kind of an extreme approach this government would have. Plus, we had elected this party in the past, a right-wing government. We have done it. We have done it in the 90s. And we have seen what has happened. Remember the demolition of Babri Masjid.
Yeah.
Right? And the number of people who were killed. They don't try to cloak what they're doing. They're not like, oh, we will behave more in an extreme manner so that we are elected, and then we will come back and we will focus on fucking governance. That's not happening. Nobody is doing that. If they are elected on an extreme, just an inhumane, asshole-ish manner for campaigning that way, you can bet they will double down on it. And this mistake of giving the benefit of doubt to people who do not deserve it at the cost of critical thinking or at the cost of basic common sense. I mean, I was very, very young at that time, and I was very dumb when I was young. If I could erase my memory of my teen years and 20s, I would absolutely do it, because I was embarrassingly stupid, right? Like absolutely depressingly dumb.
How you
Even
erase
I
your
knew.
memory of what you ate yesterday and remember all of this?
Welcome to an ADHD brain. But anyway, even I was horrified. I was like, what are we talking about? This man has done horrible things. This party has done horrible things. Why are we saying that once they come to power, they will do things properly and they will actually focus on development? They're not even campaigning on development. They're not saying that they will do anything for the country. They will say that they were saying that they will build a fucking temple, right? So this is not new. It has been happening since forever. The only benefit of doubt I will give correspondence in 1930s and 1920s is that there were fewer examples of this to rely on, right? It was not very well covered, and authoritarian regimes, especially at that time, authoritarian regimes did exist in the East, right? And there was not much coverage of that. Plus, media was being controlled by imperialists. And imperialists didn't think they were authoritarian regimes. Like the American media and British media, especially at this time, had no right to say anything because they were doing exactly what Hitler was doing in other countries. So no heroes here. Not a single one. Not forget about heroes. Not even a decent, half decent person.